Get the Friendo Club set up today and get access to over 700 Going In Raw bonus episodes, our monthly Big Blue predictions challenges, and the ability to ask questions at Going In Raw. We also offer the Steven Larson comic book and exclusive Friendo Club t-shirt. Just hit join here at youtube.com/Steven Larson or go to patreon.com/Steven Larson to sign up. Hey, Friendo, Steve here.
Hey, Larson.
Welcome back to Hot Takes. Today we're going to respond to some hot takes from the community, Larson. We do this every week, so make sure you're subbed to the channel so that you know when the Hot Takes thread goes up over at YouTube. Click on the notify bell. Let's dive into this. First up, from Sam Petroski.
Yeah.
Sam says, AEW will never be as good as it could be as long as Tony Khan is the booker. Him running creative is like if an NFL owner was their own GM. There's a reason they hire people who actually know what they're doing. Just look at how WWE has flourished when someone with actual talent is booking. Sam here thinks Tony Khan has no talent.
No talent, according to Sam here, when it comes to booking. The thing is, we've seen AEW tell some good stories before.
Yep.
You know, so it's not like Tony Khan has absolutely no clue what he's doing.
Right.
I wonder if the issue is less lack of talent or lack of ideas and more lack of bandwidth.
Yep. I think he's spread too thin.
Yeah, that could be the thing, because he runs Fulham FC, he works for the Jaguars, plus he runs AEW. Who knows what else he's got going on? He's basically got 3 full-time jobs, seemingly.
He's got 3 jobs that seem like they'd be severe overtime jobs. Not just these are 40-hour-a-week jobs. These are jobs that seemingly each of these would be like more than 40 hours a week.
Yeah, because he's head of the analytics for Jacksonville Jaguars. I mean, I'm sure he's got a whole staff that helps him with stuff, but that's, you know, the way the analytics have kind of become such a major aspect of preparation and scouting when it comes to sports teams. That's a massive thing. I think he runs Fulham. I mean, I think he's top dude there. So, I mean, that takes a lot of time, plus writing 4 coming up soon. Maybe, probably 5 with Shockwave. 5 hours of weekly TV, not including Ring of Honor, which I think he does all that himself too, plus pay-per-views.
Yeah,
that's legitimately 3 more than full-time jobs. And if he had an opportunity to scale back some of his other responsibilities, maybe we'd see him give the care that the creative in AEW needs. Because right now, that's built to Wrestle Dream. Not a whole lot of care given to the stories being told. It's literally, I need to motivate Match. What do I got to do to do that? Sometimes it is the bare minimum.
Well, it's also very last minute. You know, you've had a month to build, and, you know, it's been spread out over these past 2 weeks. And granted, I know that's 2 more weeks, but you should have had a plan going into this coming out of the last pay-per-view.
Well, they seemingly did, and they just changed everything.
Yeah. From what we understand, like, he's got a whole staff of writers similar to WWE. I don't know exactly if the process is similar or not similar. I don't know, but it is a lot. And I also understand, you know, when he gave his phrase, like, you know, we book for the sickos, it's basically like, hey, you know, we just put on matches. And so I don't know, man. I mean, it's the thing is, though, like, it's not going to change because he just was validated with this massive TV deal. And I'm sure there's probably a large part of the fan base who doesn't want it to change. They're just like, hey, you know what? I like it the way it is. You don't need story. Look at the lineup for Wrestle Dream. There's a lot of good talent there. And I'm sure they'll have a lot of phenomenal matches. And, I mean, that philosophy has carried them to this point. And I know people can point to, like, oh, your attendance is down. You know, there's not as much buzz behind the product. So I don't know if they want to get, I am of the philosophy that if you put out a really killer product, people will follow. And you look at WWE where they were back in 2019, you look at where they are now. I don't think that's simply because, it's WWE. And I don't even think it's because, people were only into AEW because WWE was crap. I think if AEW was really good, their fortunes would change for the better when it comes to the number of people being invested in their product. I think there's enough people out there for two very healthy companies. So yeah, I don't think, I kind of am half in, half out on this one. I think Tony Khan has proven to be a very capable booker, but you do have to ask yourself, has he bitten off too much, more than he could chew?
Yeah, totally.
I think it's a valid question.
I think so too. Next here, hot take.
Hot take.
From the top rope, who says, the 5-match PLE structure for WWE does not work. It did for takeovers, but the fact that Bad Blood was 3.5 hours long and have 5 matches is insane. I would rather have 4 solid hours of wrestling and feel like I got my money's worth.
Oh, strike that last one from the record. I love the shorter premium live events. I love them. And I'll be honest with you, this might be a hot take of its own. I would have rather seen Sami Zayn versus Gunther on the Raw after the premium live event because it makes that Raw even better. And the big tag match with the ladders and stuff on the SmackDown before, guess why? Because it makes SmackDown better. I already know I'm going to get a bunch of great matches on the premium live event, so why not load up the shows before and after with some phenomenal matches as well? I'm good with the way it is.
See, I don't disagree with that to the extent that the pay-per-view is likewise loaded. That wasn't necessarily the case with Bad Blood.
There was one match that probably could have been somewhere else.
I know, but the execution of some of the matches, too, and granted, you don't know that going in, not exactly, I think, up to the standard of some of the other matches on the card. But yeah, Priest and Balor could have easily been on Raw, and you could have had Sammy and Gunther on there, or you could have had the ladder match for the tag titles. From a convenience, see, there's me as someone who does this for a living, watches wrestling and talks about it. Yeah, I like the shorter shows because it's a very practical thing. That means we watch the show, we do our hour recap, and from the start of the show to the end, because it's usually on a weekend, that's like a 6-hour block at most, usually 5-hour block, where I'm working, and then I get on with my weekend. And that's a very personal thing, an individual thing for me. At the same time, we're talking about a 5-match card where there's probably easily 3 other matches that could have been on there, would have fit in. Gunther, Sammy, the ladder match for the tag titles, and you can make the case that the rubber match, the 7th match between Carmelo and Andrade, very easily could have been a pay-per-view match. And I see both perspectives, that it's good to load up your weekly TV and to do the shorter pay-per-view card, but I also see the idea that, especially it's not necessarily the case of WB because you don't necessarily have to plunk down $50 for it.
That's a big deal.
And I don't necessarily like always that AEW does the full 4+ hour pay-per-views, but I get it from a fan's perspective. You're plunking down $50. You don't want to plunk down that much money and get a 2-hour and 45-minute pay-per-view. That's
an important caveat. Absolutely. I agree. It's funny because I agree with it in so much that, you're paying money. And so it's like, it's basically, it's like a Golden Corral situation. Well, I'm going to pay $50 for this. You give me as much as you can. And it sacrifices quality. So it absolutely it can. And we've seen it many times. Mm-hmm. Dude, I can't tell you how many pay-per-views talked about with AEW where it's like, they didn't need this, they didn't need this, they didn't need this. And so, then it sort of turns into, well, what kind of value proposition, what do you value in your value propositions? Obviously with Peacock, we're paying whatever, between $6 and $15 a month. I don't know what the tiers are. And so you're not paying a whole lot. Plus you get episodes of Night Court and Matlock with your Peacock subscription.
Has it been confirmed that Night Court's actually on Peacock?
I don't know, but I know NXT episodes have been taken off. I was
It's on
looking
the
for some
CW
last
app now.
night. It's on. They're all in the CW app.
I believe so.
Oh wow. Okay. So, it's like, what would you rather have? Just like a really, really good show in theory, because it's only 3.5 hours long and you're just getting a killer show, or do you just want that all you can eat buffet plus $2 pancakes? That's a subjective thing. That's up to the consumer,
Obviously.
but yeah, in terms of the WWE philosophy, I get it. Like, before, takeovers were the result of a 1 hour weekly show, and this is the result of 5, soon to be 6 hours come the new year on main roster.
Yeah.
So I get it, but at the same time, if you want to make those surrounding episodes of television, all the better. I'm kind of cool with the way they do it.
Well, I could see it both ways. I mean, another advantage of having the longer pay-per-view cards is that more people get on the pay-per-views. You have more opportunities to.
Why does that matter?
Well, I mean, there's a variety of reasons you could be. There's something to be said for having pay-per-view matches as opposed to TV matches. Just the prestige of being on pay-per-view.
You don't get paid more.
Not anymore. You don't. I'm just saying. When your storyline is featured on pay-per-view, it seems to elevate the importance of that storyline. That's the perception, I think.
Yeah.
Is it the reality? I don't know, but I think that's the perception to a certain extent. Let's talk about hot take.
Hot take.
Jacob Mays says Bray Wyatt should have ended Undertaker's streak instead of Brock. I don't necessarily disagree with this one.
This is a tough one. So for this to be like, you'd have to extend this to like Bray Wyatt's creative should have been a lot better throughout his entire run. You know what I mean?
Like, yeah, that goes without saying, I think. Yeah.
Right. And so for him to have actually, because you can say this, they capitalized off of Brock beating Taker. Like, after he beat Taker, it was like, oh my God, this guy is unbeatable. He sort of, although he didn't use supernatural powers, he got leveled up.
He did, up until he met Goldberg.
Oh, well, come on. Goldberg was that because
I think it seems pretty clear the plan was they were going to have Brock end the streak so that when Roman beat Brock,
yeah, it was a big deal.
It was all the more a huge deal.
Mm-hmm, yeah.
Didn't work out that way for a variety of reasons. And ultimately it was like, I think Goldberg gave Brock his first L after beating the Undertaker, I think. I could be wrong. That sounds
right. No, that sounds right.
So, and I think the sentiment by and large is, for those who who didn't think Brock needed to be the one to end the streak, is that Brock didn't need it. Not to say it didn't benefit him, he didn't need it. Whereas if you have a talent who could benefit far more in theory from beating the Undertaker, like Bray Wyatt, especially for Bray coming off of losing. Let's say that Undertaker beat Brock at WrestleMania 30, so we still get Bray and Undertaker at WrestleMania 31. Bray still loses to Cena at WrestleMania 30. That went down all the same. Bray at that point felt like, wow, if he got a huge win, well, it didn't happen to 30 over Cena. If it happens here and he ends the Undertaker streak, all right, he's off to the races in terms of being main event guy. 2 years in a row, Bray losing high profile WrestleMania matches just fed into the idea that his from a creative standpoint, there's a limit to how far he can go.
Man, it's so tied into like what they did with them away from that, though. Like,
it's all tied in. Obviously, it's not an isolated thing. Yeah, I mean,
if he beat Taker at WrestleMania and still had all the same creative, it was just Vince was so half in. If he beat Taker, then you'd get some idea that, okay, well, maybe in that universe, Vince would have been all in on Bray. He's sort of forced to then treat him in the way that we all thought Bray should have been treated, as a true main event guy. But it would require that leap that Vince would have actually seen it. And in which case, fuck yeah, absolutely. If Vince had treated Bray Wyatt like the true successor to the Undertaker, I'd much rather live in that world. 1,000%. That'd been awesome. But I also understand that Vince really wanted to use Brock to get Roman over. That seemed to be, like you just said, the priority. And he fucking botched that 1,000 trillion times. And in the end, Roman, eventually, like, Tribal Chief Roman beat Brock. That didn't do shit. That did not fucking matter. His character was so damn good. He could have done without Brock that entire run, but they did the thing where they had the Brock with the title and Roman with the title, and they combined the titles, and they did the last time ever, last man standing, whatever it was, match. And as fun as it was, man, Tribal Chief didn't need that. It was cool that he got it, I guess.
Yeah.
But yeah, all that stuff with Roman and Brock, Vince just did not know what the fuck he was doing.
No.
But so yeah, I know. Look, I agree with the take. I think that'd have been way cooler if Vince saw that in Bray Wyatt, had him beat The Undertaker, the first guy to do it at WrestleMania, and then he went on to have that cool custom title that he made for himself in that one picture that he took. They realized the whole Triple H Bray Wyatt bit where he was like, oh, look at the title here. Yeah, that was Bray Wyatt. That was the Bray Wyatt we wanted to see.
Yeah.
Yeah, man. No, I agree with that totally.
It's Absolutely. Interesting that all the attempts they had to coronate Roman as the top guy by beating Brock, like, for a variety of reasons, either Brock ended up winning, or the first time Roman beat him was when when Braun tried to cash in at SummerSlam, and by the time he actually beat him clean, it was like, all right, well, he's Tribal Chief now. It doesn't really matter. Like,
was that really Roman didn't beat Brock straight up clean one-on-one before Tribal Chief? Is that true?
I think WrestleMania
because 34 Brock beat Roman.
At 31,
31 Seth cashed in.
34 Brock beat Roman, and then they had a cage match after that. I believe that Brock won again. And then the SummerSlam one where Roman won is because of distraction because Braun tried to cash in.
Right,
there might have been another match somewhere in there where Roman beats him clean.
Yeah, you might be right, though. Yeah. Boy, just an abject disaster for years. Years. Just pull the damn trigger, man.
I know.
Let's get over with.
I know.
Boy, Vince sucked.
He did.
Let's go ahead and pay some bills, Larson.
Let's do it. This episode of Going in Raw is sponsored by BetterHelp, Steve. Halloween is almost here. And it's the time of year we have some fun with what scares us. But what about those fears that don't involve ghosts or ghouls? Sometimes the scariest thing is not facing your fears in the first place, but therapy is a great tool to help you face those fears and find ways to overcome them.
And if you're thinking of starting therapy, give BetterHelp a try. BetterHelp is completely online and designed to be convenient, flexible, and suited for your schedule. All you got to do to get started is fill out a brief questionnaire to get matched with a licensed therapist, and then you can switch therapists at any time for no additional charge.
I've spoken about this on the show quite a bit. Back in my mid-20s, I was afraid of a lot of things because I was dealing with severe anxiety, so much so that I barely left the house. And eventually, I realized that I had to go to therapy. Therapy helped me learn the tools I needed to better cope with my anxiety and allowed me to go back out into the world and not be so fearful. So overcome your fears with BetterHelp. Visit BetterHelp.com/raw today to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/raw. Let's get a word from our sponsor, DraftKings Sportsbook. I'm going to give you some words and terms, Steve. TD. Tutty.
Okay.
In for 6.
Oh.
Touchdowns matter more at DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL.
And regardless of how you refer to them or how they are scored, we want to bet on touchdowns. DraftKings Sportsbook is delivering. So if you're ready to place your first bet, you can bet on something simple like choosing a player to score a touchdown. All you got to do is go to DraftKings Sportsbook app and make your pick.
Speaking of touchdowns, I'm hoping my Eagles score a few of them this Sunday. Let me check. It appears they're currently still favored this weekend against Cleveland. And while lines and odds are subject to change, I'm going to start practicing the Eagles fight song. Fly, Eagles, fly.
Don't do that. No,
anyways, I will sing it every time the Eagles score a touchdown. So, score big with DraftKings Sportsbook, the #1 place to bet touchdowns. Download the Sportsbook app and use code RAW. That's code RAW for new customers. Get $200 in bonus bets when you bet just $5. Only at DraftKings Sportsbook. The crown is yours.
Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. In New York, call 877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY 467-3669. In Connecticut, help is available for problem gambling. Call 888-789-7777 or visit ccpg.org. Please play responsibly. On behalf of Boot Hill Casino and Resort, Kansas, 21 plus age and eligibility varies by jurisdiction. Void in Ontario. Bonus bets expire 168 hours after issuance. For additional terms of responsible gaming resources, see dkng.co/ftball. All right,
ready
man.
for more hot takes.
I'm ready for some hot takes.
Hot take here from It's Kenny Johnson.
Hey, it's Kenny Johnson.
Hey, it's Kenny Johnson. Hot take. That match should have main evented isn't important in the long run. For example, Shawn Michaels versus Undertaker at WrestleMania 25 should have closed the show, given the main event we got, but that doesn't take away how great of a match it was. See also Bad Blood and Punk versus McIntyre. Can you think of an instance where a match placement on the card defined its legacy?
What a great question.
Or
let me
kind of the flip
this.
side of that is, when looking back at matches historically, do we often analyze them in a bubble, as in we look at the match itself and not so much within the context of the show as a whole?
Oh, man. So, okay, I don't know where you would put this, but Jericho versus Triple H after Rock versus Hogan, sometimes I think might get unfairly criticized, largely because, that main evented, it should have been Rock Hogan. And maybe that match would have been more fondly remembered had it not gone on after one of the most iconic WrestleMania matchups in history. Mm-hmm. So I could see that, but I don't know. I mean, nobody, I don't think anybody, when you and I talk about things like end of an era, or like I just mentioned, Rock versus Hogan, I don't, the obviously HBK versus Razor Ramon's ladder match was a mid-card match. Man, I think iconic matches are iconic matches. I mean, there are some narratives for certain wrestlers, like CM Punk, the debate over CM Punk losing to The Rock the title after he had that title, losing to The Rock and not being in the main event of WrestleMania when they did Cena Rock 2. Sorry, I'm fiddling with my camera. And, but that's more of I don't know. It's a shame that this never happened, as opposed to this match was worse off because it wasn't the main event. I don't know if anybody really... I mean, dude, Bad Blood is going to be remembered for Punk versus McIntyre. Mm-hmm. It's not going to be remembered because it didn't main event. That's a footnote. That's an asterisk that some people, I think, might include when they're talking about it. Yeah, and it didn't even main event. But the vast majority of the conversation and appreciation for that match is for how awesome the match was.
Yeah.
I agree with this take. Absolutely.
Yeah, I do too. Usually when we look back at matches in a historical context, very rarely do we very rarely are matches necessarily elevated simply because it was the main event in terms of appreciation for it. And I think there might be something to be said for matches that were forced to follow iconic matches in terms of whether they are viewed in hindsight with maybe as open a mind as possible, given where they fall on the card. Because who knows how many times, for example, Rock Hogan, you watch that, maybe the one time you've seen WrestleMania, or the first time you've seen that WrestleMania, you watch Triple H and Jericho, and you're like, that match wasn't that great following Hogan Rock. Never revisit it.
Yeah.
On its own, without the context of it following that match. So there could be something to be said for that. But, most of the great matches in wrestling history, the very first thing I don't think of was, that was the main event of that show. It was what made that match great.
I'm looking right now at the last WrestleMania we went to, 33. You know, the main event was Reigns versus Undertaker. Understandable. It was a 23-minute match, and that I think at the time was meant to be Undertaker's last match, and he didn't like it, so he did more. But like, you know, the Universal Championship match there's no way that should have main event. It was Lesnar versus Goldberg. It was less than 5 minutes long.
Yeah.
Like that shouldn't be there. Nobody remembers that match. Like it's a big who gives a shit match. Nobody's talking about that match.
Yeah.
If it was Owens Jericho and that went 25 minutes for the Universal Championship, you know, and that wasn't the main event, maybe like there'd be some conversation about should that have been. But I don't know. I mean, that match went 16 minutes, was for the U.S. title.
Yeah,
who cares?
Yeah.
And then, of course, there was Orton versus Wyatt. That sucked.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't know. I generally agree with this. I mean, you know, that's not to say I would encourage WWE to be like, hey, you know what? Cody versus Roman versus Rock for the Undisputed Championship. Let's stick that in the opener. Like, you know, I'm not going to advocate for that because that would just be weird.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, I kind of agree with that take, I guess.
Yeah.
It's something I don't really think about.
Hot take.
Hot take.
Possibly Blitz here says people who complain about no selling in modern wrestling either have only seen it done poorly or don't know what fighting spirit is.
Oh, boy.
It isn't no selling if you absorb a move, hit one back, and then die. It's a classic story of giving every single bit you have and several you don't just to deal damage. It's a bad faith argument to mislabel it as no selling.
So I think this is stemming from like one tweet that I noticed anyways, that every single quote tweet that has discovered the term fighting spirit has referenced this one tweet. And it's Sami Zayn getting hit with a powerbomb, kicking out at one. And this tweet says something like, you know, can we just all agree that no selling is a crappy thing or something like that, whatever it says. And then everybody's like, no, it's a fighting spirit spot. Whatever you want to call it, I think it's in the right context. And I think Sammy Gunther was. I think it's pretty fucking awesome. It's a really cool story beat. And yeah, I think that, you know, man, dude, there's been so... And I honestly don't think that there's a difference between engagement farming, which you can suss out pretty easily, and just like bad takes.
Yeah.
And like, boy, I've had a lot of bad takes come across my timeline that I think are completely genuine. It's just, have you been watching wrestling for more than 2 weeks? What is happening right now?
Yeah. I mean, you mentioned the Sammy Gunther spot. I can think of at least a couple other ones. When the Young Bucks hit Kenny Omega with the EVP trigger, and he kicked out at one.
Mm-hmm, yeah.
Kenny kicked out at one in one of his Ospreay matches too.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
I think when Ospreay hit him with the one-winged angel, I want to say.
Mm-hmm.
It's not a new thing, but yeah, there seems to be more conversation about it these days, specifically after Raw for whatever reason. And yeah, you know, it when done in the right context to enhance the drama of the match, it's super effective.
Mm-hmm.
It was super effective in the Sammy Gunther match in terms of building up Sammy as an underdog who won't give up.
It was a great production moment too.
Yeah. So in the right context, I think it's done. I don't necessarily consider that no selling because it's not. It's done for drama. You know, it's done for a story beat in the match. Mm-hmm. If you want to see no selling, there's an indie match where some dude wasn't selling Bryan Danielson's elbows. That's no selling. That's different.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
You know, when people are in a match and aren't, for me, no selling is when you're in a match and you're not telling the story and giving your opponent the weight their moves and strikes necessitate to tell the story.
Mm-hmm, yeah.
You know, if your opponent hits you with a drop kick and you just kind of stand there and it's not an enhancement of the story, that to me is no selling.
What's your favorite work turn into a shoot no sell moment? That isn't Danielson shooting on that indie guy. Because I know mine off the top of my head.
Most of them are so awkward.
I know. That's what's
Remember
great
when it was a Charlotte and Nia?
Oh, I love that.
Got into that little, it was like it lasted for a matter of, 20 seconds. They were kind of
great
pushing each other a little bit. And then they got back on, to the match. But
the best one is Austin Aries. No selling John Morrison's finish. Like he went down for the pin after a Starship Pain. As soon as that 3 was counted, he stood up, gave the finger to like Don Callis and Scott D'Amore or something like that up in the rafters or whatever. Not the rafters.
See, that is what you would call no selling.
That is no selling. That is no I'm not happy with whatever this situation is, so we're going to go ahead and do that.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Hot take, Steve.
Hot take.
Hopefully I get this name wrong. Apologies if I don't. Nabil Saeed.
I like that you just said, I hope I get this name wrong.
Oh, sorry. I hope the name right. I hope I don't get this name wrong. See, I didn't even do my preface there correctly.
You're good.
I was so focused on trying to get the name right. Hopefully I got it right. If not, apologies. Hot take.
Hot take.
The idea that major title changes or matches can't happen outside of SummerSlam or WrestleMania is damaging to the product. Why is it universally agreed that the 2 current world champions have to hold their titles until next year's WrestleMania? It's taken the drama out of the entire year, particularly with Cody's reign. I get this. I totally get this.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
You want to have title matches happen with some measure of drama and uncertainty about what the outcome's going to be. Because if you know who's going to win going into it, it's harder. I mean, you can appreciate the performance, but I think on an emotional level, it's harder to invest.
It's a delicate balance between what makes sense for the story, how prestigious do you want the title reign to be to maximize the effect of the rub, versus what's the most compelling story? The biggest possible moment would be Cody losing that title on the biggest possible stage to the biggest possible opponent, in this case, coming up the final boss, I would think. On the other hand, that's kind of why I appreciate, and it remains to be seen how they're going to approach Gunther's reign, given that Triple H obviously loves the guy.
Mm-hmm.
But will they use that, as they kind of already have, like Damian Priest had it, he lost it already. Will they use that world title a little bit more like they did in the Attitude Era compared to Cody, who will probably that title will probably only be won or lost on the biggest stage, which is probably I'm even taking SummerSlam out of it. It might be an annual thing with that title. I don't know, after Cody, after The Rock, I don't know. But they've got 2 different brands. You might see 2 different philosophies play out.
I guess the concern there is that even might lend it to be even more predictable, certainly on the one side. Like if you have one belt, the Undisputed title, that literally only changes hands possibly at WrestleMania and SummerSlam, the feuds in between kind of don't really matter then.
Yeah, if you don't tell a damn good story. Exactly. I mean, here's the thing. Roman had that title for how long, and we thought Drew might take it off him after that clash.
It seemed like a distinct possibility that he
lose. Yeah, absolutely. I know I saw people, and I wasn't one of them, but I saw people thinking that Sammy might win on Raw. So, that's the thing. For at least a good portion of your audience, you need to craft stories that make you think, oh, maybe could happen, Yep. And in the case of Cody, look, there's Roman, there's The Rock, there's Solo, there's Jacob. There are a couple people within that story that it's like, okay, maybe that'll be the case. And I think one thing they could do, if Cody, let's say, has a feud with Randy Orton between now and WrestleMania, sort of taking Kevin out of it, just say Randy Orton. Mm-hmm. But Randy Orton finds himself getting mixed up in some of the bloodline stuff as well. Then that might, if you really tell that story effectively, you might be able to build that doubt that maybe Randy Orton will be the guy before WrestleMania. Mm-hmm. You really have to write. You got to be really clever with the writing. But yeah, I don't know. I think it'll be interesting going into WrestleMania even then, because it's like, okay, well, if it ends up being Cody versus The Rock, logistically from a business standpoint, is The Rock going to have that title? Like, when would he give it up? Would he have it for an entire year?
Yeah, I know.
Or would they give him to Roman at SummerSlam, and then you do Roman, Cody, whatever 3 at WrestleMania 42? I don't know. Mm-hmm. So I don't know. I think that it's not going to be. I really doubt that Cody's going to have a Roman-esque run.
Yeah, I don't think so.
But there might be a bit more, prestige booking when it comes to that title versus the other one, which I think will give us a little bit of, variety. There.
Yeah. Hot take.
Hot take.
Mr. the Smurf says Goldberg was always trash. WCW just had his presentation perfect. Dude should have never been a multi-time world champ.
So I agree with 2 out of the 3 separate things that are being said here. Goldberg was always trash. Yes, I agree with that.
Yeah.
Especially if we're talking about in-ring. Oh, God.
Yeah.
Terrible.
Yeah, not good.
Presentation was perfect. It was. The presentation and the guy himself, say what you will, he had that charisma that was able to carry and the presentation enhanced what he already had. There was something about him as opposed to like the renegade that people would focus on with Goldberg. I totally disagree with this last part because I think he should have been multi-time world champion because guess what? Presentation and charisma matter in pro wrestling. Those are things that people really give a shit about. And the in-ring stuff, I think it's important to a degree.
Sometimes that can be worked around, yeah.
Yeah, you can work around that shit.
No, I'm not a fan of Bill Goldberg's in-ring work. It's never very good. For the longest time, he wasn't even a good promo.
No, not until he hit his 50s.
Yeah. Because he was doing commentary. He was doing MMA commentary after he left WB.
For sure,
2003 or 4, never it was. 2004. And, sometimes reps, you just get better at it. And he came back, and he was a decent promo. At the end of the day, the wrestling business is all about what, Steve?
Money.
Making money. And so WCW thought they can make money with Goldberg as champion. Guess what? He was going to be champion.
Let me ask you something.
Sure.
There is a lot of things that Hogan could politic his way into and out of.
Yeah.
Being able to politic out of losing the Goldberg, and I don't even know if he tried or if he just saw. There are some people who so perfectly capture, I guess, the zeitgeist, whatever you want to call it, that they feel inevitable.
Yeah.
And even back in 98, in July of 98, it was kind of neat to see a guy capture the zeitgeist of WCW fandom and wrestling fandom so thoroughly that even Hogan couldn't get out of eating a clean loss to him.
I think Hogan will lose if he thinks there's money to be made after losing. At least that's what he says. So take it with a grain of salt.
Sure.
Because how many times as he had in an interview where he says, well, I was going to lose. Well, what's next?
Mm-hmm.
Which I think for him means, what's my story to get the title back?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, sure. Yeah.
So I think that's the thing with him. If there's a path back to the title and he thinks he can make money doing it, then he'll probably be down.
I don't know if he would have been able to get out of jobbing to Goldberg. I mean, he might have structured it if he really wanted to get out of it. He might have dropped it to somebody else and then Goldberg, but I mean, because he had the creative control thing by that time.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't know. I mean, I think he obviously understood. Hey, the perception of me is going to be so much greater if I just do this, clean the way everybody wants to see it go down, and then I'll make more money because of it. And on top of that, I'm not using any political capital, so I'm gaining a bunch from doing this.
Yeah.
So that I can receive the finger poke of doom rub.
Yeah.
Yeah. But no, I think, dude, look, when you've got the charisma, when you've got the presentation, when you've got the look, that can take you really far in pro wrestling.
Yeah.
Look at Sid.
It can. Next, hot take. Darth Smirnoff says W was going to shell out major bucks for CM Punk to wrestle 3 to 5 matches a year. They should have ponied up the cash and reduced schedule for Ospreay.
This is a very apples and oranges hot take, Larson, because
yes, you have Punk, someone who built himself a pretty massive legacy within WWE, left, got fired, was out of wrestling for 7 years, went to AEW for a few, got fired, returned to WWE, a return that we were pessimistic would ever happen to begin with.
Mm-hmm. And he is the most popular guy in the company.
Well, he's one of. He's one of.
He's no coach. If I have no idea, like if like merch sales, I do think is like a legitimate.
Yeah,
but in terms of
that's
like
one metric, yeah.
him being able to pop ratings, like you've seen that, like literally his segments always go up. I don't know side by sides necessarily, but yeah, I think you can make
popular.
the argument he's either number one or number two or number three. But
Ospreay, on the other hand, never. Obviously, at the time when he went to AEW, being billed as the best wrestler in the world, and he's got a very valid claim to that title.
Sure, absolutely.
No legacy in WWE. Now, like, I certainly hope Triple H didn't call him up and it's like, "Hey, we're gonna give you an NXT deal." Essentially, you know what I mean?
I'd
like,
be really surprised.
You would hope it wouldn't be some sort of like insulting offer.
Yeah, right.
Knowing that he would most certainly have interest from AEW, and AEW would open up the checkbook to bring him in.
The checkbook.
The way WWE handles the live events now, it's not nearly as arduous a schedule as it used to be. And Ospreay seemingly wants to wrestle all the time.
Well, here, dude, look, let's just boil this down to dollars and cents.
And that's really what it is.
WWE can get a lot more out of CM Punk with a reduced schedule than they'd be able to get out of Will Ospreay from a money perspective on a full-time schedule, at least in over the next 3 years. I mean, look at the way CM Punk is. He never wrestles on Raw. He wrestles on pay-per-views. He goes away for a while. I mean, he was able to carry a feud while injured for like months. And yeah, they're giving him a lot of money because they see a huge return on that. Ospreay does not have the name value, the kind of cash, the cachet to generate that kind of revenue for WWE at this stage in his career. So it's an apples and oranges thing, just because they shelled out a bunch of money to a major draw.
Yeah,
Established, a guy who brings that with him. And I love Will Ospreay. I think he's a great wrestler, and I think WWE could have done really cool things with him, but one does not the other. Yeah. Alex Good has a hot take. Ooh, it says the end of an era Hell in a Cell match is overrated.
What?
Without the super kick into pedigree near fall and Sean's histrionics, people would only remember it as quite fun, melodramatic, Saudi-esque Legends match. You're fucking out, Alex Good. Get out of here with that.
Strong disagree with this hot take.
Strong disagree.
Strong. It's culmination of 4 years of storytelling. You can't reduce that story to the super kick into pedigree near fall and Sean's histrionics.
That was a badass moment there, I tell you what. That was an earned moment. That was not in a vacuum. That was an earned moment. They're like, we got to get this thing done for one moment. They're like, let's just DX this guy into oblivion and nobody will notice. And they couldn't even do that. Oh, it was a beautiful moment, but it was an earned moment from the previous 20 years,
Yeah.
15, whatever.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, no.
Brilliant match.
That take is too hot for us, man.
It is.
Anyways, like I said, make sure you guys have that subscription button flicked on and the notify bell flicked on so that you guys know when we're dropping these hot take threads. And leave us a rating, review, or a comment if you're listening to this in the audio realm. We've got bonus episodes, merchandise, and more at Friendo. At the Friendo Club setup. It's patreon.com/Stephen Larson. Or you can click join right here at youtube.com/Stephen Larson to become a channel member. Stephen Marson apparently is your new name. So that's going to do it for us. Thanks for tuning in. We appreciate it. Until next time, we'll see you guys around.
Goodbye.